Welcome back to Shooting Womprats. I'm Daniel.
I'm Don.
And we have a great amount of stuff for this, what I'm calling the... it's either pre-Life Day or Life Day Eve.
Yeah, something along those lines. Just, hopefully, no disco music stars show up and start doing music. All I'm saying is I don't like to envision the idea of Wookiees on roller skates.
Well, I was going to go for B. Arthur singing something.
Anyway. Happy Life Day to the rest of you folks out there in the galaxy far, far away, a long time ago.
And time for the news.
Alright guys, we have Adventure Seed number 60 this week. That's right, we have 60 of these bad boys now. The mission type is to board an enemy vessel. Mission terrain is mountainous. The complication is something misplaced or missing. The opposition is slavers, and there's no special hazard this week. So I looked at this one, and I was really kind of at a loss on this one. Board an enemy vessel. Well, I guess it could be a listening outpost. It could be, a couple of different vessels. Maybe it's even a crashed vessel in the mountains, and they're trying to find a data core or a person or a piece of equipment. That's whatever is missing or misplaced. And there happen to be slavers in the area, whether those are pro-imperial slavers or just a planetary group of slavers, or perhaps even like a Trandoshan clan that deals in a lot of slaving and stuff like that. I don't know, there's a couple of different ideas for this one.
I know one thing. I can't stand it when I lose my keys. So that's going to be the misplaced thing. I lost my keys. I hate it.
I hate it when I get up in the day and I start and I don't have any underwear on. That bugs me.
Character Tuesday is Zoot Sortis. He's an independent skip tracer. Working on a commission basis, he gets a percentage of the value of the ship repossessed. He started his career in the Mid-Rim, and he's operated toward the core worlds, but he finds himself spending most of his time in the Outer Rim, and sometimes as far as the Fringe. He's got a number of contacts, mainly as starports and shipping company. Moving in some seedy circles has given Zoot a good understanding of how the criminal element operates. Skip tracing is something he loves to do, but with Imperial control getting more prevalent, he's starting to reconsider this. He's got a young companion that travels with him. He saved her when he repossessed a ship that had been used for slaving. And this was the only survivor of that ship.
Excellent. All right. Rumor Wednesday, number 59. Actually, it should be 60. I heard the attendee of Shootmar is supposed to be making a move on his brother's planetary properties. You know who he is? His family fortune can buy entire systems, Anyway, people have been telling me that he is buying up ships as fast as they can be moved into the system, but he's looking to buy them without the knowledge of his brother. So he's not too picky on where they come from or how it was come by, if you get what I'm saying.
Now, what really gets me about this rumor is I heard that he's getting the funds to buy these ships through some serious backing. Maybe an Imperial Moth is involved in this.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting for me because it has the seeds of a civil war or the drama of a noble family that has some infighting and stuff like that. And of course, depending upon the era you put it in, if you put it in, the prequels, of course, the CIS or Palpatine could be manipulating from the back areas. You put it in Rebellion era, like you were suggesting, Moths could be involved, perhaps criminal elements that are trying to take advantage of a region. Same thing in New Republic era. And the adventure would actually fit quite well in any Old Republic scenario as well. So, interesting stuff there. On to the planet, Daniel.
Planet Thursday number 60 is Jonda, and it's a terrestrial planet with a temperate climate ranging from negative 23 to 84 degrees. It's got a Type 3 atmosphere. It requires a breath mask. It's got a dry hydrosphere. It's 16 to 15% humidity, and a standard gravity. It has one main shallow ocean and 3 smaller seas. The surface is mostly plateaus and tabletop bluffs. There are a number of snow-capped, long and winding mountain ranges. There's your mountain ranges for your adventure seat, by the way, folks. Local creatures have adopted many modes of travel, from large hopping predators that can leap 15 to 20 meters or further, or many types of flying creatures. What seems to be an absence is any real diverse aquatic ecosystem. There is one, just not much of one. It's inhabited by 790,000 sentients, and the government is a group of corporate companies that work together through a collective governing body called the Moot. Technological levels on par with galactic standard, and has not 1 but 3 stellar-class starports. Its primary function is trade. It's located on a very active hyperspace trade spine, and many goods and products make their way through here. Some of these activities need support and additional crew members, forwarding services, and so on, so you can have players set themselves up on this planet as a good way to get themselves involved in a freighter campaign.
There you go.
Oh, Don, it's time for the buffet.
The buffet. I'm a bit hungry today. I hear they've got some special stuff there. In fact,
and for you listeners out there, it is about lunchtime where I am at the moment, so I've got to fight the actual need for food here.
Before he goes into a coma. I need food!
Luwingo Spence, author of the Medical Sourcebook, proposed some optional rules for critical injuries.
Yep, he sure did, and I am really interested in these. I've had a chance to go through the Medical Sourcebook at length, and I really like taking time to talk about these rules specifically. Now, guys, the mechanics of this are that if you roll the wild die and you roll a 6, you have one of 2 options. You can either go ahead and use the exploding dice mechanic, which means that you can continue to roll it and add that to your total, or you can stop rolling your D6, your wild die at that point, and choose to have a critical injury to the person instead. And that the options available on a random table, again, are whatever that wound level would be. For example, if they're stunned, wounded, wounded twice, incapacitated, mortally wounded, etc. So, the other mechanic that goes along with this expanded use of the wild die is that if you re-roll your wild die and it comes up a 6 again on the second or later roll, if the dice keeps exploding, you can stop it right there and choose to go ahead and not re-roll and choose to have a critical injury instead. Hopefully that makes sense. So, Daniel, first blush, what do you think?
Good amount of crunch here. Luwingo, I see him a lot as like the C.R. McNeil of medical stuff here. I mean, he knows his stuff when it comes to this, and this is a great rule set when it comes to wanting something different. And the system rules as written is solid. There are a good set of rules I think they could do with some more play testing or actual play testing. And Luwingo never mentions any sort of play testing in this.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'm actually starting up some of my games again, so I might actually try and use this. I like it. I guess there's a couple of other things that are of note on this. Specifically, one of the mechanics that I like with this set of rules is that if you do a critical injury, the task number for healing goes up 1 level. So, for example, if you are wounded, which I do believe is a moderate roll, I can't remember. But anyway, in this case, that particular wound that you've taken is actually aggravated, and you would have to make, instead of a moderate, a difficult ranged roll. And this, of course, is the same for any of the different wound levels. But on top of it, there are suggestions that if the person is incapacitated or worse, incapacitated, mortally wounded, etc., that they can't be healed with a normal healing pack or a med pack, that they would require the use of a back-to-tank or actual real surgery. So, I mean, I like that, though it does bring into question mortally wounded. The rules as written requires you to make a roll every round. I think you roll I can't remember 100%. I think you roll a d6, and if you roll less than the number of rounds that you've remained untreated, your character dies. So you cannot die until the second round, and you'd have to roll a 1. Now,
what I like about the mortally wounded section is after treatment has been applied, you roll another die. And then there gives you all sorts of extra things here. Take, for example, maimed. One of the character's limbs is permanently lost. It is until it's replaced, no actions can be performed with that limb. Now, here's where some ambiguity begins. How can you tell if it's your gun hand?
Yep. Well, you just roll a 6-sided. If it's even, it's your good hand. If it's odd, it's your off hand.
But what if the player has not stated dominant hand?
Well, then it doesn't matter.
Ooh.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to worry about it myself. I'd just be like, if you're going to be that, if I know the character and I know that, traditionally all his hands are usually right, then, there you go.
But the whole results after mortally wounded and treatment come in are interested. Here we go. We got gruesome injury on a 2. You roll 2 die, and dependent upon what the 2 die land up as, an attribute is permanently reduced by a pip. And then you've got paralysis, internal bruising or bleeding, and the end is 9. Instead of rolling 2d, character rolls 1d at the end of the round to determine death. And then 6 is lucked out, no critical injury. Something else that I've considered after reading this is scarring. If you've suffered a critical injury like this and you haven't lucked out, there should be some sort of, outside of maimed, that's a pretty obvious one, like a scar. And the character has to notate that the scar is on them. And depending on where it is, sometimes these things don't come up. And in the case of somebody who's been acting out against the Empire, they get an update as to this character's look. That scar is there. Kind of makes them stick out now.
Yep, definitely. Excuse me. Something I think I would point out, there's a couple of things that I was thinking about. First of all, is going back to the critical injuries. If a person is mortally injured with an aggravation, I call this, instead of calling it critical injury, I'm just calling it aggravation. But if a person is mortally wounded, aggravated mortally wounded, however you want to put it, it requires a back-to-tank or surgery for them to be healed. But they have to be stabilized or they continue to get worse. So my question that I have concerning the rules he's put up so far is, so if a person goes off and has to use a med pack on them, it's not going to change their wound level. They're not going to go from mortal to incapacitated, but they'll stay at, I guess, at mortal until they get some help. But the question I have is that the target number that's required, does it also go up an additional level when using that med pack to stabilize the person, or is it just for when they go into surgery? I don't know. I think, me as a game master, I think the intention is that they have to make the roll at the additional difficulty penalty, and that it would not heal them but just stabilize them. That's all it's going to do, and they're going to stay that way until they get into a back-to-tank or surgery.
Yeah, I think that's how I see a med pack working. It only stabilizes. It's not like a miracle cure.
Well, at least not at that level. Not like, incapacitated and mortally wounded and stuff like that. Now, on the wounded and wounded twice aggravated or critical injury table, I did see something in there that I was I'm not really sure about the mechanic of it. option number 10, which is the person that's injured, is overpowered. The explanation is the character defenses are overwhelmed. Attacker may attack again without multiple action penalty. So I'm assuming that what that means is that the person can immediately make a second attack on that person with no additional penalty, just a free attack if they want to take it. And I'm not sure how comfortable I am with that. That's kind of nice, and it's quick and it's easy, especially if it's only a second attack bonus. I think I would make that an automatic attack or hit, just roll for damage and roll versus soak. Otherwise, the other option you could have in that person is that their character defenses are overwhelmed. They don't get a dodge roll, they don't get a brawling parry, they don't get a melee parrying roll. They're just standing there going ooey ooey ooey. Yeah, exactly. I think about like throw Mama from the train where he hits him in the head with a frying pan. Like, But all in all, guys, this is definitely something worth taking a look. It was posted up in the Ranker Pit forums. It is also in the it's not ready yet, but is currently going through the editing and layout process. Medical Sourcebook. So this is a great preview. Take a look at it, guys, and give Luwingo some ego booze and tell him what you think of it.
Next on the list of discussion, Garkhal from the Ranker Pit posted up a question that I liked. In Shadowrun, it has been there from the get-go. There's this company called DocWagon. In Shadowrun, there's a service called DocWagon. What it does is provide specialized emergency medical care to a person. If a person is shot, stabbed, whatever, a little device on their wrist usually goes off, and it dispatches a DocWagon medical team. Well, he proposed somebody do so. Well, he just asked if someone could do something along those lines, and that's what I did. I wrote up something for a company called StarMed, and I'll share this. I'll share the document up on the blog so you can read it. But in a little bit of a in a little blurb. StarMed is a corporation dedicated to providing emergency medical care to beings all over the galaxy, at a cost, of course. The difference between StarMed and a regular planetary emergency medical service is night and day. StarMed keeps actual doctors on their crews, whereas a planetary emergency crew usually consists of beings that are only trained to stabilize a patient. And speaking of funding, StarMed is a private corporation. Well, this means a being has to pay for services. It also means that StarMed isn't bound or loyal to a certain government or species. StarMed takes its calls seriously and will not refuse service to anyone as long as their contract is current. I had to do a little bit of adjustments. The services were, at first, I only wrote them out in broad terms, and I realized then I had to do a little bit of focus on them. StarMed services are simple. Contracts are sold in levels, 1, 2, or 3. A level 3 contract is simple planetary service anytime. The customer hits their comm link, and StarMed dispatches an armored air speeder to them, as long as there's no apparent danger. Any injuries to StarMed staff will result in a penalty to the contract holder. There's a limit of 2 calls allowed per standard galactic year without penalty. A level 2 contract allows for a little more leeway. StarMed professionals will extract a contract holder depending upon assessment of danger. The penalty for StarMed staff being harmed is lesser, and StarMed will also perform 3 extractions per galactic standard year without penalty. A level 1 contract, the most expensive by far, covers any extraction at any time, regardless of present danger. There are no penalties for StarMed staff injury, and there are no limits to how many extractions can be called at any time. I developed StarMed as a paramilitary organization. Someone brought up the question as to government affiliation. I don't see StarMed as having any at all. They hire ex-military and mercenaries to couple hostile extractions. A StarMed airspeeder has the equipment necessary to heal a being of most any injury on site, except, of course, those critical injuries, which will probably be dragged into play. I might have to add them to the write-up on this as an option. Things like amputations, critical injuries, they require extraction to a secure facility, which of course would be owned by StarMed. Governmental affiliation shouldn't be one. If StarMed's called into a conflict, their insignia should be enough to know that a VIP has been injured, and StarMed will not engage unless fired upon. Medical rules apply. StarMed's a medical provider, therefore most won't fire upon them. After all, you don't want to shoot the hand that holds the scalpel.
Nope, that would be bad. That's like messing with the hand that rocks the cradle, man. You're messing with galactic forces. Just say. I like this. I think I've played Shadowrun once. I'm not real up on the background or anything like that, but I did play a whole crap ton of Cyberpunk 2013 and 2020, and they had their own version of this, which was Trauma Team. And so I'm familiar with the concept. The two things that I will point out about this, well, actually the three. The first one, it doesn't feel very Star Wars at all. Two, I would think that this would be related more to a region. For example, either a city or a certain part of a continent for response times, unless it is like they have different branches in different areas with overlapping coverage and stuff like that. And the last thing I'd point out about this is I would think that it would be just incredibly expensive.
Garkhal actually proposed it would be 15,000, 50,000, and then 150 or 200,000 per galactic standard year for each contract. I'm not too sure what kind of prices I would go with. And Peter Lomas out of the Gilgamesh community has posted a couple of photos that I found interesting. That they're great imagination fuel. One is an Imperial Star Destroyer that looks like it's been buried in some stand, and then the other one is a picture of a droid stuck in a swamp.
Yeah, I like these. In fact, excuse me, guys. Let's see. I actually put a brief blurb up there just as an idea. Trying to remember what it was. I believe it was. Let's see. In late 3 BBY, Emperor Palpatine had at a place called the Nasudu Shipyards had started work on the Prestige. And this was built on the hull of a new Imperial 2 Star Destroyer, the basic beam work and stuff like that. And it was unique because it incorporated lost technology from the Jedi Sith War, which took place from 2000 to 1000 BBY. And some of the technology, basically, Palpatine didn't fully understand it. Not yet, anyway. But they built it, and the preliminary tests were extraordinary. But during its maiden voyage, something happened, and the ship disappeared. It was never seen or heard from again. But recently, the remains of the ship have been found on the desert Montatune. In the desert Montatune on the planet Farstaff, in basically an uncolonized planet. And that is what I came up with an idea. You had one too, didn't you?
The one I came up with for the Star Destroyer was that there are rumors of a planet that was the site of an orbital bombardment by a Victory-class Star Destroyer. Some of the crew, realizing what was happening, mutinied and sabotaged the Vic's engines. The orbit decayed, and she slammed into the surface. No one's managed to get out there to loot it. The crew is either dead or in hiding, and word hasn't made it back to the Empire.
Yeah, I thought those were two really interesting ones. I was kind of disappointed. I really was hoping to see more people kind of just chime in with a brief, couple sentences, 2 or 3, maybe 4 sentences, explaining what the picture was like. I know I do that a lot when I'm looking for inspiration. I'll head on over to Google Images, and I'll just go through a whole bunch of images. And what I'll do is I will save the picture, and to that picture I will attach my first impressions of whatever it is that I'm seeing. For example, if I see a really high-tech, large cityscape, I might save it as core area planet or city, stuff like that. So I was kind of hoping people would kind of sound off on it. A couple did, not many. I didn't get one for the droid in the swamp, though. Did you?
I did. It reads, "My joints have rusted and become inoperable. I can no longer continue on. However, the color continues to function, and even as I am paralyzed, my programming still urges me onward. I've been in this location now for approximately 7 standard years. My power cells are nearly drained, and I find myself pondering existence after deactivation. Will my processes return should someone find me and repair me? Will I ever be repaired? Or will I waste away to nothing, covered in plant matter to the point of becoming part of the environment?"
That's awesome. You have a proclivity for droids anyway, man.
I know, I love them.
They're your thing, man. Yeah, I think I tried to post something like, over the swamp and through the woods to the master's house we go. I think it's what I posted for that image. something to that effect. But anyway, I don't know. Peter, I'd love to see more of these images, brother. Just for inspiration and stuff like that. Heck, I might just post an image once in a while up there that I found on the in Google Images, and ask people to comment on it. Try and make it Star Wars. Try and get people to comment on it. I don't know, Daniel. What do you think about that? We're pretty stringent on people posting non-specific Star Wars stuff.
If it's something that pertains to the game, I'm all for it. If it's imagination fuel for the game, yeah. Do not. I'm really, really against what I'm going to kind of refer to as non-standard images. And let me be a little bit clear about that. These are I don't want to see, and I may sound kind of imperious here. It's my right. It's my community. I'll say it. I don't want to see your dumb I don't want to see your dumb Darth Vader backwards helmet type of thing. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Darth Vader, the real OG, baby.
Or the what is it? The Sith army knife. I don't, and I say this because I don't want to see the community spiral downward, as in Facebook. Yep.
Well, I tell you, I mean, if the images seem to be pertinent to Star Wars and it's helping with the whole creation process, I think we're good with that. Absolutely. We can try it, and if it becomes too much of a distraction, we just won't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree.
All right. Well, hey, something that I've been experimenting with is taking the bonds mechanic from Dungeon World, if anybody's familiar with that, and applying it to my character creation. Something that I just tried in my last two groups actually, during character creation, sat down and said, okay, how does everybody here know each other, and why are you guys together? Because I wanted to sort of have an established group feel, and I didn't want to go through the whole tired trope of spending an entire game session, narrating out how everybody meets, and go through that whole thing of, well, I'm a bounty hunter and I don't trust anybody, so I'm going to spend half the game session being like contrary to everybody else because I don't trust them. I wanted to skip all of that. So something I came up with was using the bonds from Dungeon World. Have you taken a look at that all day? Are you familiar with Dungeon World?
No, Don, I'm not familiar with Dungeon World at all.
Well, I mean, for those people out there who are not familiar with it, then it's a very rules light. I think it only a couple of different dice for it. Really, it's very real simple, but it's narration heavy. So it takes into consideration a lot of the interpersonal stuff between characters. Anyway, the bonds, what they mean is these are the feelings, thoughts, those connections that tie characters together. At character creation, I have all the people there, and I allow everybody to have one bond, or I require that they have a single bond with at least one other person in the group. And what they can do is they can go, well, I'm going to have for example, Daniel and I are sitting at the table. Daniel, I'm going to have a bond with your character. All right, what is that bond? You know what? You saved my life in a cantina brawl when a Gamorrean was trying to come up behind me and trying to hit me with his cudgel. I didn't see it coming, so I pretty much feel like I owe you one. Now, there's a second bond that I have, which is called a group bond. And what happens is that the group together picks one person in the group for that person to have a bond with, and then the group decides what that bond is going to be. And so what this does to me, I don't know how well that mechanic quite works yet, but the whole idea is to get it so that every person has an interconnected or spiderweb connection to the next person socially in some way. Now, yeah.
I hate to jump in here on this, but I remember this now. I actually remember this. It's not because of Dungeon World, which I have never played, never even read a book for. Do you remember the GURPS campaign for Twilight 2K?
Yeah.
Russell used those bonds.
Yep, because I made those rules for Russell to use.
I see what you're doing.
Yeah, see, I've been fooling around with this mechanic for a while. So basically, what does this mean? What is the benefit for the characters to have these bonds, other than to say, okay, this is how our group is put together, this is our connection? As a game master, I've toyed with two ideas here. One, every time that they role-play out that bond in a significant way during the game, give them a character point. If they get to the point where they feel as though this bond has been resolved or something of that nature, if the two people involved in the bond believe that bond has been no longer applies, and they can sell me, the game master, on it, I will award the person 3 character points for it. And then they go ahead and mark that off the character sheet, and then they can start developing another bond. I want characters to always have at least one bond, and they can have additional ones through role-playing as long as they can make it make sense to me. I want it to develop characters, not a way for them to get free character points during play. And that's bonds. Any questions?
Not really. When we played around with the bond system in that GURPS campaign, it seemed to have worked out really well.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us something unique to work with. Plus, it gives the GM a story hook for the characters.
Well, I mean, it also explains why everybody's together, which is kind of important to me. Mm-hmm. Why did you guys get together? How long have you been together? I mean, why? What is the glue that puts everyone, holds them together and makes you guys a group? What makes you guys heroic?
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. What else do we got, Daniel?
Now we're moving on to the Jedi Library, where Don and I discuss a book, in this case, the Medical Sourcebook. Now, a caveat before I begin talking about this book, I'm going to refer to the author by his Ranker Pit name, and I do this, I guess, sort of in error because I haven't had a chance to ask him. So the author of this book is Luwingo Spence. Now, this is his Ranker Pit username and not his real name, so we plan on actually having him on the show to talk about the book once he's completed it. We were given a review copy to go over and discuss on the show for it.
Yep, and I have gone through it exhaustively. In fact, I can spend an entire hour going through this, but I don't think we need to go to that level. I will tell you this right now, guys. As it stands in its preliminary form, this book is currently weighing in at 357 pages.
Mm-hmm.
There are it's broken up. I think it's in, I'm trying to remember how many sections. It was broken up into 6 sections. And those sections, just kind of give you guys a brief overview. There's the medical skills section. This basically tells you what new skills there are, as well as the older established skills and how they relate to the medical field. It also has some interesting new modifiers for the use of those skills in that sort of direction. It has offered up, like some optional rules for natural healing that I really liked. It went into detail of phases of treatment of injury, which, for example, breaks down into phases of diagnosis, treatment and injury, recovery. It takes into account the treatment cost, as well as a game mechanic for risk of infection. And all of that is just in the first chapter. There's even in the first chapter, there's even an optional rule for the use of med packs, which, in a nutshell, what he had suggested was first a mechanic for the amount of time it takes to use a med pack based upon the severity of the injury, which I think is fantastic. I've been thinking about that for a long time, but he actually put it to paper. The other thing with this optional med pack use is he puts forth the mechanic that a med pack does not take away the injury. All it does is make it so that you can sort of ignore the injury and continue on, that you will require natural healing or a back-to-tank soak to actually get real healing. But that MedPack is more about stimulants, synth skin, and stuff like that, getting it so that you can function. And the mechanic that he suggests is that a person that is, say, wounded or wounded 2 would be able to function as though the MedPack had worked correctly, but if they are wounded again, then they go up the next wound level that they were. So, for example, let's say a person is wounded 1. Use a MedPack on it successfully. He is now stunned, which basically means after 2 rounds he doesn't have any negative modifiers. So for performance and rolling dice and just kind of like, interacting with the universe, he is unwounded. On paper, he is still wounded 1 until such time as natural healing or a back to soak. He gets shot by a stormtrooper, and he's wounded again. He doesn't just become wounded, he becomes wounded 2. So I thought that was sort of an interesting thing. What's your take, Daniel, my brother, my compadre? Like I said, I could talk about this all hour.
Yes, believe it or not, Don took pages of notes on this because he wanted to be sure that his research was up to spec.
I did 5 pages of notes, baby.
Exactly. To me, the book was actually, it's from what we got of it, it's really well written. I love the little comments that the Luwingo, he introduces a character, which is a medical, and I use that term very loosely, droid. It has personality quirks where it sees its patients as squishies or pathetic, that sort of thing. And I like the addition of flavor text where the droid is giving comments. Take, for example, the Chapter 5 is the medical personnel, and so far it's all droids. And the little comments that are made after each droid is introduced is pretty interesting. I'll give an example. For example, the A-series medical droid. Now, this is a surgical droid that it has a specification, a specialization in medicine called cyborging, where it performs cybernetic surgery. The droid that Luwingo created to kind of help narrate things, kind of like Platt, its little its quote here is, "You have to admire squishies that want to become more like us. This series of droid is really doing something far greater than saving lives. They are helping orgs become closer to perfection."
Yeah, I like it too. I mean, I think in the very first chapter he also introduces a flavor text where there's a droid, a medical droid that has no bedside manner.
Yeah, this is that same droid, and he uses the image of the droid from Edge of the Empire, which I like that a lot because anything we can snatch from them is always a plus.
Yeah, well, they got their thing, we got our thing, and neither shall meet, and things will be awkward when we come to the family reunion, and no one will talk about it.
Something I want to do is, I'm hoping he'll accept the write-up on StarMed and maybe add it to this.
Definitely a possibility. I mean, it does add something to that specific vein or direction that he's going with. Well, anyways, moving on, just give you guys a little bit more information about this. Let's see, I think Chapter 2 is about disease and symptoms. Mm-hmm. It's like 57 pages long. It has basically rule mechanics for the introduction to disease. And what's really interesting about this, I mean, he's got diseases broken down into each disease. All right, has its own little write-up, which includes exposure, incubation, symptoms, medical diagnosis, treatment, recovery time. He has a list of 90 plus symptoms with game effects. He's got a list of, oh my God, I'm trying to remember how many different diseases they are, but he goes so far as to break down diseases into categories of like airborne, of which there's 35 of them. Broken skin, 10. Contact, 25. He has genetic, ingestion, fluid exchange, exposure, and then on top of all of that, he adds in environmental effects, mechanics for extreme heat and cold, as well as suffocation and vacuum. He touches on mental disorders. He touches on radiation sicknesses and sanity levels.
He adds in an option in the ability for user-created diseases.
Absolutely. I mean, all the mechanics are there for making it. It's just, it's in depth.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I've used this word before. I'll probably continue to use it again. I think we're looking at a renaissance here of fan-based material.
Absolutely. I think there is a window of opportunity for it to indeed take place. Let's see. Moving ahead, Chapter 3 is medical facilities around the galaxy. And this basically, what he's done is he's taken medical facilities and sort of broke them down by how good they are, sort of along the same lines as starports. There's different and varying degrees. And he's given personality to those, as well as like level of care and skill that you can get at these sort of places. I'm trying to remember what else there was. Well, anyway, let's move on to like Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is huge. It is 88 pages, and it deals with equipment. Medical equipment. All kinds of stuff in there. Daniel touched on Chapter 5, and the one that people might actually find the most use out of is Chapter 6, which is entitled Illegal or Questionable Medical Procedures, and actually almost takes up a full third of the book. It's 101 pages long. And just real quickly, the high points of this chapter was a very detailed and very cool section on cloning. Another section on bioengineering, which is also followed up by Yuzum Vong, biotechnology. There is a cybernetics section with 4 new optional rules. There is a subsection for enhanced cybernetics, weaponized cybernetics. There's brainwashing rules, which I think appeared in one of the West End game books first, but has been put back in here. There's interrogation rules, which take into account not only truth serums, but equipment to resist interrogation. There are some examples of interrogation droids. There's a section on biological weapons, as well as a random bioweapon generation table. I mean, there is a ton of really good stuff in here. My concern is that how much this stuff is going to be used by the average Star Wars player. There is a lot of specific, narrow information available here, and I'm not really sure how it practically applies to a standard Star Wars game. What level of detail do your characters want? Now, if you got a bunch of doctors who are running around, that's fine. Or, maybe for an NPC or something like that. I don't know. But with that being said, it's still very cool, and it is one of those things where even if you can only pick, if you just cherry pick the stuff you want, there's still enough in here that you can use it in your game.
Now, once again, this is a review copy that we're going through, so this isn't complete by any means. There's still work that needs to be done.
Yep. I think that's working on the layout on that, isn't he?
I believe so.
Yep.
Once all that gets done, he's not sure when this will be out for public consumption, but when it does come out, both Don and I give it I guess we would call it a Womprat pup or something.
Yeah, it gets two Womprat tails.
Yes.
There you go. Those big scaly tails. Hey, speaking of source books and stuff like that, I was looking over at the Old Republic Sourcebook, and apparently, I think it was on the 4th or 5th of December, the game, the MMO, had released a new storyline. And I had asked if he was going to, with all the work approaching completion at this time, was he going to actually try and play through that and add it into the book? To which he responded, no, he didn't think he was going to do that. They might have a follow-up splat book for it, but that at this time he had no plans of adding it. He had also said that he had not had a Force section added in, but he does believe he's going to add one in. He's going to be very specific about the Force skills he's going to use. Apparently he's going to add something like maybe 40 or 50 additional pages to the page count. So he's thinking the book is going to eventually weigh in the low 400s when it's all over and done with. Hulu is going to love me when I get that printed off.
I tried to print out re-up over the weekend. They were offering a special one, and I managed to get 40% off of a book. And had I actually been able to put the money down on it, I would have gotten all of re-up for $50.
Re-up would have been nice. I've looked at taking you can get all the Saga conversion books into a single hardback book. But unfortunately, the PDFs are not sized correctly, so I wasn't able to do it. Apparently, you can also go off and take... Oh, goodness. If you go off and put them in a trade paperback soft cover, you can get all of the... stat books. And I think there's 7 or 8 of them. And those can be printed off for as little as $13 or $14 each. Yep, Hulu's good. And by the way, this Wednesday, the tracking says that my copy of the Star Wars re-up should be in my hands. Yeah.
Lucky dog. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Shooting Womprats. Before we go, I have kind of an announcement to make. I mentioned in an earlier blog post that there was something big coming out. I was considering this my life big gift for you guys. The leader, head person in charge, format guru, Mike Fett, proposed an idea. And this is something that goes out to everybody who's ever had an idea. Everybody who has that book that they want to write. I'm introducing Womprat Press. What Womprat Press will do is we will take your idea We will format your idea into the format that you see re-up the Old Republic Sourcebook and this Medical Sourcebook coming out too. And we will put it out there for people to read. And then this is for fan-based stuff, so naturally we're not going to be making money. But this is something that is going to solidify. It's going to give a name to this stuff coming out. In short, this is going to be the OSR.
Yeah!
So if you've got a book that you want out, you can contact us. You give us your ideas. You give us your drafts. We'll edit them. We'll format them. We'll slap the Womprat Press name on it, and we'll host it. So, how do you do that? shootingwomprats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we do that too. That's SWD6 Podcast. We're shooting Womprats on the Ranker Pit if you want to contact us that way. And of course, there's the G Plus community, and there is a community over on Facebook. I don't visit it as much anymore. There is a subreddit that I have actually kept active with now. It's SWD6. So,
Yep. Hey, Daniel, real quick. We didn't mention it. Wild Space Magazine, #1, out.
That's right. Wild Space issue 1 is out. It is currently up on the blog, so if you'll take a look through it, you'll find a place for it. Grab it, read it, let us know what you think, and if you've got a story or an adventure or anything of that nature, article.
We're preparing submissions for second issue, which is going to be out, March 10th?
It'll be the first week of March.
Yeah, so, anyway, we don't have the actual schedule down yet, when submissions are going to be due, when final edits are going to be due, and stuff like that. But we will definitely look into that and let you guys know either through the blog. I do believe there's the Wild Space Magazine G Plus community, which hasn't gotten a whole lot of play yet, but we will do more with it. But again, if you guys have an idea, a submission, if you have that, Galaxy Guide, Revenge of the Sith, book out there that you've been working on, sitting on for a while, maybe you might want to serialize it as opposed to getting the whole thing done at one time. We can serialize it over several issues of Wild Space. A lot of different options available, so let us know what you guys think. Get creative, or else.
So on behalf of Shooting Womprats, I'm Daniel.
I'm done.
May the Force be with you.
That's right. Be kind to your family and Gundarks. Have a good weekend.